How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 3 of What If Deku Turned into a Nomu. And now, let's begin. Right as Stain slashes his sword towards Izuku, Izuku catches the blade, crushing it within his fist. As Stain's sword falls down to the ground in pieces, he stands up back at Izuku before jumping back, now with his backup sword in his hand. Calm down, Stain, Izuku would say. I would like you to take me back to their warehouse, just so you can get the reward. I've been meaning to go back there. I've just not really decided to yet. Stain would nod his head before cautiously walking up towards Izuku, as Stain would then lead Izuku towards wherever the villain hideout was, even though Izuku already knew where it was in the first place. So, with that, Izuku would walk into the villain hideout before sitting down right next to Shigaraki. Ah, Izuku, welcome back. I've been waiting for your arrival and return. I knew those heroes couldn't keep you there for long. I knew you were strong enough to get past even All Might's grasp. So I had faith in you. Izuku would just slowly nod his head before asking Shigaraki to take him to the 5 students that they had kidnapped. Shigaraki would nod his head before shooing off Stain, giving him his reward, as Shigaraki would then lead Izuku off to wherever they kept the 5 UA students. As he would lead them down there, he would then walk into a massive room where the doctor was busily at work, just putting things into different test tubes and all of that, doing different tests. As Izuku would look on into just the massive pillars filled with fluid, he would see that there was 5 just bird monsters all in there. As he would see the names written on them, as they were Tokiyami, Kaminari, Tsuyuasui, Ediro Kirishima, and Mina Ashido. As Izuku would look on at them, Shigaraki would then smile. They happen to be some of the strongest quirks we've seen, and plus the enhancement quirk and the healing quirk, they've all gotten quite strong, Shigaraki would say, as Izuku would nod his head. So you think I'll be quite the asset for us when we go and attack UA the next time, huh? Izuku would say as Shigaraki would then nod his head. Oh, yes, of course. It will be quite good for all of those UA students to see their former classmates become Nomus, and see what they'll eventually become later on, Shigaraki would say as Izuku would nod his head, as Izuku would go back to his room, where it had just been kept the same, as he would sit down on his bed. He would start to think long and hard. Should I stay with the villains, or go back to the heroes? Or should I just become a vigilante? Izuku would think to himself, not quite sure. The heroes were insanely corrupt, only doing things for the fame and money. However, there were some very small, just good apples in the group that just did it for saving people. And however, one of those being All Might, or the biggest one of that, however, ended up just retiring after his fight with Izuku. And the villains, many of them just are there to be villains, while a lot of the time it's because they need to do things to support their family and other things, or they've just been led down that path by bullying and other things. So Izuku really just couldn't decide. However, Izuku made up his mind. He wasn't going to become a hero, however, he was going to become sort of a villain in the eyes of the law. However, with his enhanced intelligence quirk, Izuku realized that the best wouldn't be to be a hero or a villain. He wasn't going to be able to do what he wanted to do in just a lawful or legal way, so Izuku had to make something up to do it. So Izuku basically just formed his own government in his own head, which, with his insanely intelligent quirk, it was quite easy for him. So Izuku now, with his intelligence quirk and what he wanted to do, he knew he would have to stay with the villains and go along with their plan until he could end up just finding a way to overthrow it and eventually end up creating his own government or whatever he wanted to do eventually. So with that, Izuku would end up walking back down to just the main area of the base before speaking to Shigaraki. So, Shigaraki, what are your plans to do as a hero? Or not a hero, sorry, villain. I've kind of gotten mixed up after being with all those heroes for so long. So what do you plan on doing as a villain after All Might's dead? Oh, that's quite the question. I plan to kill anyone that doesn't go along with my ways, the villain way. So I'll form this world into what I see fit with it. Zuku would frown before nodding his head. All right. So, what's our next plan of action? Oh, we're going to attack UA during the UA Sports Festival. Here, Shigaraki would say, handing Zuku a paper flyer that he had found. So, the UA Sports Festival is happening in just around a week. Huh. So we're going to attack them, and I presume right at the medal ceremony. Zuko would ask his Shigaraki, would nod his head. Oh, the look on all of those kids' faces when they see their own classmates and friends turned into monsters. Zuko would nod his head, just smiling, hoping to trick Shigaraki to think, oh, he's going along with my plan, and likes it at that, too. So with that, Izuku would walk back up to his room to just go ahead and think about all of the just planning that they were going to have to do to attack UA once again. So after this, Izuku would end up just having a week pass as he was now sitting with Shigaraki. You ready, Shigaraki? Izuku would ask as he would nod. Alright, well, why don't we go ahead and start this? Zuko would nod his head, going into his portal mode, as he would then create a portal right in front of all of them. As Izuku would walk through, Shigaraki would give the order for all of the Nomus to walk through as well, so they would all walk through right in front of the medal ceremony, as hundreds more villains would then pile out of just the portal as well, as heroes would jump down from the roofs of the or not the USJ, the UA Sports Festival Coliseum, so they would all start to fight the villains. However, Izuku had managed to put a portal beneath all of them before putting a portal up above at the top of the UA Sports Festival Coliseum, where they would all just be standing there watching as the chaos would unfold, as none of the heroes were still up there, having jumped down already. So they would all be standing up there watching the chaos, as many of the villains would start to overpower some of the lower powered heroes that had managed to go there. Since a lot of them weren't like Endeavor, they were around top 50 heroes, they were still quite good, but they weren't top 10. Top 10 heroes were out doing other missions and other things. So these villains started to slowly overpower them just in numbers alone. And so once all of the heroes would slowly, barely end up being able to do that, all of the Nomus would end up being transferred down there along with Izuku and Shigaraki. This is where some of the students that had jumped down to start helping them would look on in complete and utter shock. That's our classmates. Many of them would realize due to the similarities that some of them had, as they could easily recognize all of the Nomus, as they looked quite similar. So they could easily recognize Tokiyami, Kirishima, Kaminari, Mina, and Yuasui, as they all recognized that this is what their own classmates had become. Would all do this. Many of them would act out in a rage, jumping at them. However, Shigaraki would tell the Nomus to go ahead and capture them, not to kill them, but to rather capture them so that they could be used for further experiments. So the Nomus would rush in before capturing them, tying them down with some of the cork-canceling tape that they had all been given. These Nomus were trained, after all. They were trained in the orders to know how to tie up people, and so they would easily round up many of the students that were there, as Izuku would all pile them up and throw them through a portal. As many of the low-life heroes, or the above top 10 heroes, would end up being defeated by Izuku to let the other Nomus do their thing, as Izuku would just rush around either punching them, knocking them out, or throwing lightning bolts right at them to just knock them out or put them in a coma so that they couldn't bother the Nomu who was grabbing all of the students. All Might would jump down into his buff form even after retiring and the loss of his quirk, and would try to punch Izuku, but right before he could, he would go back into Small Might form. I'm sorry, All Might. It's just what's meant to be, Izuku would say. However, very quickly, he would create a smoke cloud, throwing a thunderbolt right down into the ground, sending a huge cloud of dirt flying and fuming into the air. Izuku would create a portal underneath both him and All Might, as Izuku would then be seen in a remote location, as he would then just put All Might there. All Might, father, stay here, Izuku would say. I'll speak to you later about this. All Might would be confused, but at the hope that Izuku was possibly changing his mind about being a villain, he would stay there, hoping just to get to speak with his son for at least one more time. And so Izuku, going right back to the Colosseum, would continue on just keeping all of the other heroes at bay. Since all of the other students were gone due to Izuku helping the student Nomus capture all of them, so they really had no other reason to be there, as many of the other heroes would try to come in. However, Izuku again would just keep them back, and so Izuku would then fall back into a portal along with Shigaraki and the 5 other Nomus. As they would all be doing this, Izuku would ask Shigaraki if Izuku can question all of those just heroes, or the heroes in training, that is. So Izuku would take them all down towards a basement warehouse type dungeon looking thing, where he would have the Nomus sit them up into a quirk canceling chair where they would be tied down to it, as Izuku would start to question them. So, heroes, do you mind telling me, what do you plan on doing with your life as a hero? Or do you fancy being a villain at all? Izuku would say, questioning many of them. All of them would say that they did not want to become a hero at all, and that's why they wanted to become heroes after all. So Izuku would then ask another question. So, why do you plan on becoming a hero? Izuku would ask, as many of them would just start to think. Izuku would tell them that they have 5 seconds to answer, as he would point to Bakugo. Bakugo would say to smash villains' heads in, as Izuku would just look back down at him. You don't think trying to become a hero, you'd want to save people, but rather not just for the chaos and fighting that comes with being a hero? Bakugo Katsuki? Who cares? How about you? Todoroki would calmly say to save people, and that's what many other people would end up saying there. So Izuku would end up rolling in a projector before just creating just a slideshow where he would then show many of the people there the corruptness that is being a hero. As Izuku was saying this, many of the students would look on in shock and would start to become just in denial. No, these aren't heroes. They can't be. As Izuku would continue on showing even newspapers and videos about heroes killing innocent people in the line of fire, not caring, being just cocky and throwing attacks everywhere, trying to eat a villain without caring about the common good of the people, killing many of them in the crossfire of it as well. As many of would see this and just would look on in shock, as Izuku would end up asking them all. So, I don't like being a villain. It's, at least for the ways under Shigaraki, the blue-haired fellow. So I decided to create my own organization. It's called being a vigilante. So, how many of you would like to join it? We'd be doing it for the people. We wouldn't make any money, of course, and we'd be breaking the law. So, how about that? You'd still be considered villains in the eyes of the law, but you aren't killing anyone, that is. We're only just trying to make this world a better place here, and try to cut back on all of the corruptness in this hero society. Some of them would... Izuku would have the Nomus break off all of the restraints, as Izuku would then ask them, why don't you go ahead and stand up and walk over towards me and turn around and face your fellow classmates if you decide to join me? I want this world to become a better place for the kids in the next generations. I don't want it to become some fiery wasteland filled with being corrupt. That just simply wouldn't do, would it? Many of the students would stand up. However, many of them would shake their heads saying that they just couldn't live with someone who turned their own classmates into those Nomus. However, Izuku ended up staring right at them, just giving them a straight answer. You know your classmates here. Tokiyami, was it? Or at least one of them was named that. You know, this process can be reversed. It will take time, but it can be reversed after all. I don't want the fact that I've hurt your classmates before to harm your just opinion about this. Many more students would end up standing up, as finally only one student was left sitting there, as it was Bakugo Katsuki, as he would stare on at the kid that he had bullied for only around a day, as he would stare at Izuku Midoriya. So, will we at least get to fight people? Oh, well, that's quite the question. You know, you'd get to fight twice as more people as you would as a hero, Bakugo. You'd get to fight villains and heroes. You just can't kill them, that is. Bakugo would finally stand up as Izuku had managed to get all of the classes, or all of the students in that class, to become onto his side. So, you guys will just have to remember this. Sadly, my plan just has you all becoming Nomus, of course. This makes you all will get extra quirks, that is. So you should just be happy. Anyway, I'll be gone. The doctor will now see all of you. As Izuku would snap as the Nomus would rush in, tying all of them down, as many of them would just be like, wait, what? We're becoming Nomus? They would all ask, just in synchrony in their heads, like, wait, this wasn't a part of the deal, was it? As all of them would then be taken where the doctor was and being thrown in these giant tubes of liquid, as their body would start to shift and mold into a sort of monster capable of being able to hold all of these corks. And so with that, their bodies would turn into these just different types of Nomus, as Izuku would even be standing there watching as this process would slowly begin transforming what looked like normal people into just monsters, something you'd seen in a horror film. Izuku would end up walking out of the room, not wanting to see it no longer, as he would end up going up to Shigaraki. Alright, Shigaraki, what other plan do you have to do? I just realized, if Stan gets captured, he doesn't really like villains at all. What do you think would happen if you were to tell all of those heroes where our location happens to be? So, Zuku, why don't you go out and find that stupid Stain and bring him back here for me, will you? Izuku would look at Shigaraki before nodding his head. Alright, Shigaraki, I guess I'll do that. Izuku would walk out of the door before jumping off around the alleyways, just looking for Stain and wherever he could be. As we now cut to see Shigaraki walking down into the basement where the doctor's experiments were located. Ah, doctor, please tell me, have you managed to finish all of the Nomu or the 1A project? The doctor would look over towards Shigaraki before smiling, just an insane smile, opening up his arms wide before yelling, "Ah, yes! All of these Nomus have been finished. Ah, luckily they're quite the powerful ones, too. We've gotten the good role of Izuku here, bringing in all of these people in. Ah, this Nomu army is growing quite fast, isn't it, Shigaraki?" Shigaraki would nod his head before walking back. However, he'd just be mad that Izuku just had to go out at the word of himself, too, to go and find Stain. He wanted to get a portal to go over to wherever All For One is to speak with him about the 1A project. So with that, we now cut back to see Izuku hopping from building to building, where he inevitably ends up finding Stain. So, Stain, we finally meet again, Izuku would say as he sees Stain now hovering over Tenya Ida's brother, Tensei, I believe that's his name. So, Izuku, I see you finally decided to meet me again. Over before Stain could even finish his sentence, Izuku would kick Stain right in the back, sending him flying the other way, sending him flying right into a dumpster, hitting the top of it. So the top of the dumpster would then close right onto Stain. However, as soon as he caught up, he would fly out of the dumpster right at Izuku, a sword now lifted above his head as if he was about to slash down on Izuku. However, Izuku would dodge Stain's attack. That's not going to work on me, Stain, Izuku would say, jumping backwards before lifting both of his hands up with a thunderbolt in both hands, throwing him down as they would all fly down, crashing into Stain, electrocuting him as he would then get knocked out. Izuku would end up picking Stain up before tying him up, throwing him through the portal, as Shigaraki would then see Stain fall into a portal, as Shigaraki would then see Stain directly right in front of him. Ah, Stain, finally we get to meet again. However, Shigaraki would get no response since Stain happened to be unconscious. Right as Shigaraki was about to do anything, two people would end up walking through the door. These would, of course, be Dabi and Toga. Ah, hello. Who do you happen to be? Shigaraki would ask, as both of them would just look on towards him. Oh, well, we want to become villains, Dabi would say, as Toga would then jump in the air. Oh, yeah, villains. That's what we want to be. As Shigaraki would nod his head before just saying, alright, you're in. Just sit down and do whatever. I don't care. Just don't disobey me. I hate people that don't listen to orders, Shigaraki would say as they shrugged their shoulders, so they would then sit on a couch right behind Shigaraki. Alright, that works for me, they would say. As we now cut back to Izuku just running around the city looking for any of the corrupt heroes that he had done quite the research on. As Izuku had decided to research just corrupt heroes, as he had even asked Stain times while Stain was walking back with Izuku towards the villain hideout just a couple of days prior. So, with that, Izuku would end up rushing around the city, finding corrupt heroes, and just asking them what their deal was and why they didn't care about saving people. However, Izuku would end up getting no response, so he would end up just knocking them out and running around, just really not doing anything. As Izuku was really just acting on anger, he had seen something that had completely shocked him, as he ended up seeing in one of the newspapers and even on the news that a preschool had been completely decimated by a flailing and flying attack by a hero that was careless, which just completely shocked Izuku. How could a hero, someone who's meant to save lives, kill so many, and the public, they just didn't care? Oh, he was stopping a villain. It's just what happens. Izuku just would be so shocked. How could the public not care about this? It was just completely shocked and boggled Izuku's mind. It just didn't make any sense to him. As all of this would end up being happening, Izuku would walk back towards Shigaraki as Izuku would look on towards him. Ah, Shigaraki. So, I'm guessing the Nomus have finally been complete. We cut back to, or just around right after Izuku had dropped off all of the students at the doctor's place, where he would end up going through a portal and meeting up with All Might in the warehouse. Ah, Father, we finally meet again, Izuku would say, as All Might would yell at Izuku, saying, what have you done, Izuku? You can't go back you can't even try to become a hero anymore after this. However, Izuku would shush All Might. Father, you know I never wanted to become a hero. Well, not after seeing how corrupt this society is. I might have wanted to become a hero when I was 4. But that's a 4-year-old me, not now. I've seen how corrupt this hero society was. But luckily, my own father wasn't one of the corrupt ones. That's why I'm asking you, All Might, Toshinori Yagi, to join my group, my league. Izuku would be saying this. All Might would just question him even further. You're creating a villain league? All Might would ask as Izuku would calmly shake his head. Oh, quite the contrary, actually. I'm creating a league that's bent on stopping the corrupt heroes and defeating to be villains that have no reason to be villains only for the fun of it, and will be just allowing for people that really need help to join our ranks. I want to help this world, and becoming a hero isn't going to do it. As if I'm a hero, how am I going to take down all of those corrupt ones? Zuko would say, clenching his fist, as All Might would just shake his head. You might have a point with that, Izuku. Your ideas and ideals, they might get quite hard for me to get used to. But, fine. I guess I'll go ahead and help you. I've seen it quite throughout the years of being a hero. I've seen all of the corrupt people. Everyone that's just done it for the fun of it, or done it for the fame and money, instead of just trying to save as many people as possible. I can't believe what I've seen during my time as a hero. My own hero agency, even. They told me if I were to tell anyone about this or expose any of those heroes, I'd be ruined. Like, no one would even care. Only caring that I tried to ruin a hero's reputation, making up lies. I guess you're quite right about the society being corrupt, Izuku. However, your ways... Are you trying to kill anyone? All Might would question even further. All Might would end up just explaining all about one of his students, Mirio, and how they need to find him so that he can join their ranks as well, as Mirio has his quirk one for all, and it's going to become quite the strong quirk too. Izuku would nod his head before asking All Might to go and find Mirio so that they can meet up in a different off-site location. All Might would rush off to go find Mirio, and for some reason, he didn't tell anyone else. He trusted Izuku, his own son, even after Izuku had shown just true acts of villainy. Just the hope that his own son was coming over to the light side was too strong for Izuku or All Might to look past. And so he would end up going and finding Mirio and bringing him back to the warehouse. So, Mirio, All Might, why'd you bring me here with this villain? No, don't tell me you're one of the villains too. Calm down, Mirio, All Might's striking voice would say. You would stop yelling at All Might. All Might would tell him to listen to what Izuku was trying to say. This is my son, Izuku. You may have seen him. He wants to stop all of the corruptness in this hero society. You know how I told you about all of the corruptness and how you need to stick with all of the ideals that I taught you. Well, he wants to break those ideals. Or not those ideals, but break the hero society along with all of the corrupt heroes and rebuild it to make it not corrupt at all. So, who end up nodding his head after All Might would explain this to Mirio. It sounds quite noble, but wouldn't this be all illegal? Defeating villains, we'd sound like... or defeating heroes and villains. We'd still be villains in the eyes of the law, wouldn't we? Mirio would say as Izuku would sadly nod his head. Sadly, yes. But it's for the greater good, of course. So we might be fugitives for a while until the public starts to turn in our favor, but hopefully that should happen quite soon. Mirio would nod his head before just sighing. I should possibly go out and try to find the big three to explain this to them. Izuku would then look right back at Mirio before calmly telling both All Might and Mirio, you both need to go back to UA and act like nothing ever happened. Wait, what about Class 1A? All Might would say. Zuko would not just say, oh, they're fine. Don't worry about it. Don't say this to anyone else in case they try to spread anything, as I'm still in the League of Villains after all. I need to overthrow them, of course, Zuko would say, as he would then walk out of the building before just rushing off to go and find the hero that happened to destroy an entire preschool with one of his flailing fireballs, and this just happened to be Endeavor. As Izuku would end up finding Endeavor, Endeavor would end up going in to fight Izuku. Endeavor had heard about how All Might had failed to defeat Izuku, so he wanted to defeat him to show that he was himself better than All Might. So he would go in, sending a massive wave of fire barreling on towards Izuku before just rushing off, going back. As Izuku would continue on chasing Endeavor before finally, all of a sudden, a massive spotlight would end up being blazed down onto Izuku as Endeavor was nowhere to be seen. As Izuku would look all around him, as he would end up seeing just hundreds of heroes along with police officers all surrounding him. His intelligence core, it had been completely shielded by the complete hatred that Izuku had felt towards Izuku, completely acting on his own emotions. Izuku Midoriya, put your hands up, they would say. And that is where I'm going to leave part 3 of What If Deku Turned Into a Nomu off. Part 4, if it has come out already, should be in the comment section below. A pinned comment will have the link to it. So if you're watching this in the future from when I'm recording this, go down, check the comment section, and see if part 4 is already out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.